Before the zombie outbreak, I fled to an offshore island. With all the supplies Mom left me, I hunkered down at home. I was a mama's boy. My food, my water, my shelter, all of it came from Mom. Even with zombies roaming everywhere, I still had Mom to cover me while I rode it out. Sweetheart, buy supplies right now and go hide on our island. That strange call from Mom left me and my best friend Sophie frozen in the middle of shopping. I quickly lowered my phone volume and stepped aside. Mom, what did you say? Noise crackled through the phone. Mom lowered her voice, as if someone might be listening. Do you remember the virus I told you about? Of course, I remembered. Mom had a doctorate in biology. She had been recruited by the Heartland National Research Institute. That was why I came with her to study in Heartland. 6 months earlier, the institute suddenly disciplined her and sent her home on leave for a while. After she came home, she acted strange from morning to night, and she pulled out years' worth of savings, plus my grandparents' inheritance. Somehow, she bought from a wealthy businessman a huge fortified island villa. At first, I thought she just wanted somewhere to unwind during her leave, but instead, she poured almost all her energy into that villa. She seemed determined to turn it into an unbreakable fortress. When I visited during break, she had even bought a yacht. Then she taught me step by step how to pilot it. Patiently, she told me exactly where the island was and where to hide the yacht once I got there. She said the institute had recently developed a novel virus. Originally, they had only tested it on primates, like monkeys and apes. The experiments had gone smoothly, but for reasons no one could explain, the higher-ups suddenly demanded human trials. Mom had flatly refused to go along with it, so the institute disciplined her and sent her home for several months of forced leave. I never asked Mom what had really happened, but seeing how cautious she was, I started taking the whole thing seriously. Get back to the safe house and hide. No matter what happens outside, do not come out. Lock every door and window. Activate full lockdown. Mom, what about you? After relying on each other for so many years, of course, I did not want to save only myself. I will come find you in a few days. Remember, go right now. Do not delay. Do not go back to school to ask for leave. Okay. I agreed over and over. Do I need to bring anything else? No. I already bought everything you need. Just take whatever you think is essential. Drive to the coast and pilot the yacht away from the mainland. Mom was already getting impatient with my rambling. Still, she warned me word by word, full of worry. Okay, I am going now. Mom, please, stay safe too. I know. Mom hung up decisively. The noise on the other end vanished, along with her voice. I did not dare waste another second. I hurried toward Sophie, who was waiting nearby. Ethan, what happened with your mom? Sophie had been waiting there, confused. Did something happen? I took a deep breath, trying to slow my racing heart. Then I gripped Sophie's hand tightly. Sophie, things are about to fall apart. What do you mean, fall apart? Sophie looked completely confused. Why would your mom suddenly tell you to hide on an island? I warily glanced at the people moving through the mall. Then I gritted my teeth. Do you have money? Sophie froze. Her hand instinctively went to her purse. She thought I was joking. She shook her head, again and again. No. Ethan, you know exactly how broke I am. I had no time to explain. I only said, send me your bank details. Sophie stared, blankly. Why would I send you that? In my panic, I growled the words. Sophie flinched, startled by me. At last, she realized I was not joking. She quickly handed me the bank card from her purse. Ding! A transfer soon appeared on Sophie's phone. 1 million. Sophie stared at me in shock. Are you insane? Where did you get this much money? It is Mom's. I can use her card. Then why transfer it to me? Sophie quickly grabbed the card back. She was about to transfer the money back. I grabbed her hand at once. My face was grim as I looked at her. Sophie, something terrible is really coming. There has been a viral breach at Mom's Biology Research Institute. I have to get to the island and take shelter right now. You need to buy necessities immediately, as much as you can. Sophie was so scared. She could barely process it. I did not dare stay in the mall any longer. I took Sophie's hand and headed straight for the parking lot. Sophie, when you get home, do not tell your parents the truth. They may not believe you. Just say, I need their help buying these supplies. Tell them to store everything at your place for now. As I pressed the gas, I kept warning Sophie. Okay, Sophie nodded blankly. Is the viral breach that serious? Yes. Mom did not give me details, but it is definitely a disaster. I nodded. I ran several red lights in a row and got Sophie safely back to her neighborhood. Remember, get your parents to prepare supplies with you immediately. Treat it like a pandemic, worse than COVID. Sophie got out and nodded. Then she quickly pulled out her phone to call her parents. I let out a breath. Next, I just had to drive to the coast. Once I boarded the yacht, I would be mostly safe. Ethan, this watch is for you. Sophie tossed the watch in through the car window. She gave me a gentle smile. Even if the world is ending, you still deserve a happy birthday, Ethan. I stared as Sophie turned and ran into the neighborhood. The watch lay quietly on the passenger seats. In that instant, a sudden, aching grief rose in my chest. This goodbye might be the last time we ever saw each other. I did not really know what kind of viruses Mom studied, or what they were capable of, but I believed one thing. If the situation had not reached a critical point, she would never have warned me with such urgency. From my city to the place Mom had docked the yacht, it was about 300 kilometers. The fastest, safest option was to drive there. The whole way was quiet. So quiet, I almost feared. Mom had only been playing some awful joke on me, yet beneath that calm, something felt terrifying. I could not understand why experiments meant for animal testing had suddenly been pushed into human trials, nor did I understand why. After the institute disciplined her, she still went back to keep researching the virus. Once I hit the highway, I floored the gas. It took nearly 3 hours to reach my destination. By then, night had already fallen. Only a few scattered lights glowed by the dock. The silent night felt eerily still. According to the local rules, the road to the dock was blocked off at night, with no one allowed in or out. At that moment, I could not be sure whether any virus carriers were already here. I did not dare alert anyone. I quickly gathered the essentials I had with me and stuffed them into my bag. Then I put on the watch Sophie had given me. After getting out of the car, I crept carefully toward the iron gate at the dock. I held a flashlight between my teeth, ready to climb the gate with both hands and feet. But the moment my foot touched the gate, the old, poorly maintained iron gate creaked loudly under my weight. At the same time, waves of barking rose from nearby dogs. That kind of noise would definitely draw attention. I no longer had time to climb over slowly. I quickly turned and ran back. Gritting my teeth, I started the car again. After backing up for some distance, I slammed my foot down on the gas. The car accelerated straight toward the iron gate. Bang. The first hit did not break it open, but the gate was already swaying, ready to fall. I reversed, then hit the gas again. Bang. The gate still did not fall on the second hit. The front of the car had started to crumple. The barking was getting closer. I reversed, one more time. A yellow Labrador lunged up onto the rear window of my car. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I hurriedly shifted gears and floored it. This time, the gate could not stop me. Under the violent impact, it finally gave way and burst open. Shouts from the locals were already rising behind the car. I drove straight up beside our yacht. I grabbed my bag and got out. Then I went straight to untie the yacht. I started the yacht's engine. The dock guards were already running toward me. I had no time to let the engine warm up properly. I fired it up at once. I turned the yacht around and headed out toward the open sea. Of course, the dogs reached me first. I had no idea where the lead German shepherd found the nerve. Even when my yacht was already 5 or 6 meters from shore, he suddenly leaped. He landed straight on the deck. The other dogs were not brave enough to jump after him. They only stood on the shore, barking madly at me. A German shepherd is no joke in a fight. I did not dare underestimate him. After steadying the yacht's course, I grabbed the fire axe beside me, but he did not charge toward my cockpit. Instead, he kept barking at the passage below deck. Just as I was wondering why, under the yacht's dim lights, I saw the stairs from the lower deck, and a figure slowly climbing up. How could someone be hiding inside Mom's yacht? Just as I was wondering why, under the yacht's dim lights, I saw the stairs from the lower deck, and a figure slowly climbing up. How could someone be hiding inside Mom's yacht? The German shepherd barked faster and harder. He even backed away 2 steps without realizing it. That skeletal figure, slowly, emerged into the yacht's light. Only then did I see what kind of monster it was. His sallow, darkened face had almost no flesh left. Wrinkled skin clung tight to the bones of his face, making his high cheekbones and forehead jut out. Flies crawled around his deeply sunken eyes. His right arm was reduced to a stump. A long, torn sleeve dragged from it, smeared with some unknown, black slime. This thing could no longer be called human. I took a deep breath. Gripping the axe, I slowly crouched down, facing the German shepherd. I might still have had the courage to fight, but facing this unknown creature, fear rose in me on its own. Roar. The man let out a hoarse roar, then charged at the German shepherd. The German shepherd yelped, then turned and ran around the deck. The German shepherd moved fast. For a moment, the man could not catch him. Only then did I truly see what the man looked like. Inside those deeply sunken eye sockets were 2 lumps of something rotten and black. He looked exactly like a zombie. I remembered Mom's muttering from the past few days, and my heart sank even deeper. Bung! Yelp! Yelp! After a heavy crash, the German shepherd's pained cry rang out. A moment later, they circled back to this side of the deck. The German shepherd's hind leg had probably been hit. He kept that leg tucked up as he limped backward. That zombie-like thing was forcing the German shepherd step by step toward the edge of the deck. I could not wait any longer. If the zombie infected the German shepherd or drove him off the yacht, then I would be the next one in trouble. I took a deep breath. Then I crept quietly to the door. The German Shepherd seemed to notice me moving. After whining toward me a few times, he started barking non-stop at the zombie again. It was as if his courage had come back. The German Shepherd's barking grew faster and sharper. The noise made the zombie even more frantic. With a roar, it lunged toward the German Shepherd. I seized the moment. The instant the zombie passed in front of the door, I raised the axe and smashed my way out. The glass in the door shattered at once. Shards flew everywhere. Some sliced across my face and arms. Some struck my body. But I had no time to care. I stared hard at the zombie whose head I had struck with the axe, collapsed on the floor, but still thrashing. By then, the German Shepherd had stopped barking. He limped over to my side. Then he growled at the zombie a few more times. Watching the zombie keep struggling, still trying to stand, terror flooded through me. But I still stepped forward with the axe. I aimed at the zombie's head and smashed down again and again. No blood sprayed out. Only black fluid slowly seeped from its skull. Only after the zombie stopped moving completely did the strength slowly drain out of me. I dropped hard onto the deck. The yacht was still moving slowly forward. We were already far from shore. The salty sea wind reeked of rot. I looked at the injured German Shepherd. He whimpered twice. Then he lay quietly in the corner. I could not bring this zombie corpse back to the island. I found a hook in the storage area below deck. I hooked it into the zombie corpse and dragged it toward the edge of the deck. Then I kicked it hard. I threw it overboard. Hook and all, a streak of black fluid remained on the deck. I found a washdown hose and sprayed all the filth off the deck. After finishing that, I returned to the cockpit. Following the coordinates Mom had given me, I steered toward Haven Island. About 2 hours later, I saw the island. It was practically cut off from the world. Around it, there was nowhere to stand, except the reefs. I carefully piloted the yacht until I found the hidden sea cave Mom had mentioned. The cave entrance was not large, but the space inside was anything but small. Unknown vine-like plants hung down outside the entrance. I had no idea how Mom had found this place. I gathered a few supplies from the yacht, with a flashlight clenched between my teeth. I shouldered my backpack and stepped onto the uneven rocks beside me, ready to climb out. Woof! The German Shepherd suddenly barked at me. He looked at me, pitifully, to keep anyone from stealing the yacht. Mom had deliberately built no walkable path here. If you wanted to get in, or out of the cave, you had to climb carefully. So of course, a dog could not get out either. I glanced around the cave. There was no food. No fresh water. This dog would not survive long here. Woof! He barked at me again. Shut up. I was terrified. His barking would alert the others on the island and expose the yacht's location. Wait for me to come back. I climbed out of the sea cave, using both hands and feet. Luckily, the island had not been fully developed yet. Only a few scattered households lived there. My arrival did not attract anyone's attention. I woke to a slightly flatter spot and dumped everything from my bag onto the ground. Then I shouldered the empty backpack again and climbed back into the sea cave. Woof! Woof! Shut up. Sure enough, the German Shepherd was still waiting for me on the deck. He wagged his tail at me excitedly. I held on and picked my way over the jutting rocks, carefully climbing over to the side of the deck. Do not bite me. I have had my rabies shots. I pointed at the German Shepherd, pretending to look fierce. Oh woo. The German Shepherd whined twice. Then he circled twice on the deck by himself. I found the right angle and jumped onto the deck. I pulled the empty backpack off my back and opened it in front of me. I set it down. If you want to come with me, get in. I will carry you out. If you do not come, I am leaving you here. Once the virus fully breaks out, even this island may not be completely safe. I am not running out here every day just to feed a dog. The German Shepherd tilted his head and looked at me. He stood at a cautious middle distance, apparently not understanding what I meant. I pointed at the empty backpack. Then I pointed outside. Get in. I will take you out. The German Shepherd still stared at me without moving. He even balked at me. You ungrateful little mutt. I muttered the complaint under my breath. Then I got up and reached for the German Shepherd, but even with one bad leg, the German Shepherd dodged me with surprising agility. Are you sure? If you do not come with me, I am not taking care of you anymore. I was too tired to waste time arguing with a dog. I grabbed the backpack and started to leave. Woof, woof. The German Shepherd barked at me twice more. I sighed helplessly. Then I took a sausage from the yacht. After I tempted him again and again, the German Shepherd finally surrendered to the lure of the sausage. Step by step, he walked toward me. When I was little, I had watched my grandparents catch cats and dogs. I aimed for the scruff of the German Shepherd's neck, grabbed it in one hand, and shoved him straight into the backpack. To my surprise, the German Shepherd was completely focused on eating the sausage. He did not struggle at all as I stuffed him into the backpack. The backpack was not big. Only half of the German Shepherd fit inside. His upper body still hung over the outside. With great effort, I hoisted the German Shepherd onto my back. I draped his two front legs over my shoulders. Do not move around. If you fall, I cannot swim. After the German Shepherd finished the sausage, he seemed to understand me. Aside from looking around, he stopped moving. I followed the same route back, climbing out of the sea cave step by step. The moment my feet touched level ground, the German Shepherd sprang off my back. He limped around, looking in every direction. I packed the things on the ground back into my bag. Then I glanced at the German Shepherd, who had already started wandering around. I turned and headed toward Mom's villa. Ring, ring, ring. My phone suddenly went off. It was Sophie. What's wrong? The moment I answered, I heard it. Sophie was sobbing, and there was chaos on her end. Ethan. Zombies. There are zombies everywhere. I let out a sigh. The speed of the viral outbreak in the city was far beyond anything I'd imagined. I ran into one too. Are you okay? Sophie asked at once, worried about me. You were not bitten, were you? I saw people get bitten. And not long after, I am fine. Do not go outside from now on. Stay home with your parents. Wait for rescue. Okay. Sophie sniffled softly. You be careful too. Yeah, I have to go for now. I am still on the move. I will talk to you later when I get back. I held my phone and flashlight in one hand, while using the other to push through the grass and branches around me. Okay. Sophie answered in a small, hurt voice. Then, be careful. Remember to silence your phone. Try not to make any noise. These zombies are sensitive to sound, but their eyes are already rotting. If you have no choice but to fight one, aim for the head and smash it. Other vital spots are useless. Okay. Okay, I will remember. Sophie answered quickly. I hung up the phone. Then I glanced back. At some point, the German Shepherd had followed me. He trailed after me, wary yet strangely dependent. After walking for about half an hour, I finally found Mom's villa. Of course, Mom had thought of everything. The villa sat halfway up the hillside. There were almost no clear paths up or down that would slow down zombies and people alike. A tall wall also surrounded the villa. An electrified fence ran along the top. To get through the perimeter gate, I first had to use the access key that only Mom and I had. Once inside the perimeter, entry to the villa required facial recognition for either me or Mom. I was just about to close the outer gate when the German Shepherd stood a few yards from it, staring at me with pleading eyes. Even the tail he had been holding high drooped. After a moment's hesitation, I let him into the yard. Since the island was built for people to live on, it naturally had independent freshwater and power systems, but Mom, just in case, had still covered the yard and roof with rows of solar panels. That way, even if the island's power system failed later, our house would still have basic electricity. Following Mom's instructions, I activated full house lockdown mode as soon as I went in. I did not know everything, full lockdown included, but from what I could see, the electrified fence had powered on, and every door and window in the house had sealed shut. After tidying up a little, I took Brousson's sprain liniment from the first aid kit, along with bandages and a splint. The German Shepherd was curled quietly in a corner. When he heard me move, he only gave me a listless glance. I pulled out a few sausages and tossed them right under his nose. While he rushed to eat, I pulled out his injured leg. I had never studied medicine. I only knew the most basic first aid. I carefully felt the slightly twisted bone in his leg. Back on the yacht, I had no idea how he had tangled with the zombie, or how exactly he got hurt. Fortunately, the zombie had not gotten its claws or teeth into him. There were no visible wounds on his body. Otherwise, I would have been afraid he might turn too. First, I rubbed his leg with bruise and sprain liniment. He barked at me twice, like he was cursing me out. Then I used a splint and bandages to secure it as best I could. I could not be sure whether that leg would fully heal. The rest was up to him. I brought out a bowl of water and a bowl of chicken breast from the house. Then I set them in front of him. When Mom first built the villa, she probably never imagined we would end up keeping a dog here. So there was no dog food in the house at all. After treating the German Shepherd's injury, I went back inside and took a shower. I was just thinking about making something to eat when Mom suddenly called. Sweetheart, did you make it home? I did. Mom, how are things on your end? I quickly set down what I was holding. It is still safe where I am, for now. I will come find you in a couple of days. Stay home and keep your head down. Do not open the door for anyone, okay? I understand. I nodded quickly. Static crackled. Maybe the signal was bad on Mom's end. The broken electronic noise made it impossible to hear what she said. After that, I only vaguely caught something about the basement. I was the one who had suggested adding a basement. I had thought an extra level would be good for storing clutter, but Mom clearly had something else in mind. The entrance to the basement was behind the walk-in closet in Mom's room. It was extremely well hidden. After tidying my own room a little, I went to take a look at the basement. If the end of the world had not come, I would have suspected Mom planned to open a supermarket on the island. The entire basement covered more than 200 square meters. It was packed with every kind of supply: food, drinks, household goods, clothing. Almost every daily necessity was stocked there. According to Mom's plan, the basement supplies were not to be touched unless absolutely necessary. After all, the villa above ground already had plenty of supplies. On the first day of the zombie outbreak, Lyden's government was still trying to cover it up. They claimed it was only a terrorist attack. They even tried to pin the blame on Selborne. I opened my phone. The trending news was full of stories about it. Ethan, you're not at school, right? My friend Aisha sent me a message. The school is doing a head count. Where are you? Should we report you as safe? I hesitated for a moment. Then, I chose to reply. Aisha, do not worry about me. I am safe at home. It is chaos outside right now. Do not go out, no matter what. The things I left in the dorm. Use them, if you need anything. Not long after I sent it, Aisha replied. It is okay, as long as you are safe. Be extra careful out there. Aisha and Riley were my friends. They were both from back home. I did not usually hang out with them much, but we were on decent terms. Now that things had come to this, I had no idea whether they could hold out until rescue came. Scrolling farther back, I saw a teacher asking why I had missed morning class. Given the situation now, I probably did not need to explain anymore. I put down my phone and glanced out the window. Outside, everything was as quiet and peaceful as ever. For now, this isolated island was still very safe. After struggling through the whole night, I was so tired my eyes kept watering. Not long after my head hit the pillow, I fell asleep. Sweetheart. Look out! Mom's terrified cry rang in my ears. I whipped around. Less than 10 feet away from me, a zombie that had already turned was standing there. Mom's scream seemed to flip a switch. The zombie lunged at me like it had gone mad. Its hollow black eyes stared straight at me. I was so terrified I stumbled back several steps. Bang! I watched the zombie stop right in front of me. Black fluid slowly seeped from the wound. Then, it crashed to the ground. Mom! Mom rushed over and slapped me across the face. Did I not tell you? You are not allowed to tell anyone about this place. I stared at Mom in a daze. I had no idea when I had exposed our home's location. I turned to look at the zombie. At some point, that zombie had somehow become Mr. Lane. Where is Sophie? I asked Mom in a trembling voice. Ethan. Sophie stepped out from behind Mom. Her face was soaked with tears as she sobbed softly. My dad. I turned to look at Mom. She glared at me, furious with disappointment. Then she took her gun and turned away. Sophie and I hurried after her. I was terrified of letting any distance open between us and Mom. I had meant to comfort Sophie a little more, but when I looked back, I realized Sophie had vanished. Sophie! I shouted at once. When I turned back, Mom was about to disappear around the corner too. Mom! Sophie had vanished, and Mom was about to vanish too. After one moment of hesitation, I sprinted toward Mom. The second I rounded the corner, I saw Sophie's mother tackle Mom to the ground. Mom's neck was already torn open with bite wounds. Mom! My eyes snapped open. The first thing I saw was the crystal chandelier on the ceiling. For a second, I did not even know where I was. My heart was pounding like it might burst out of my chest. Emptiness. Confusion. Silence. All of it surged through me in that instant. I hurried to my feet and looked out the window. Lush, green mountain woods. A vast, blue sea. So quiet, it felt cut off from the world. No! It really was cut off from the world. In that moment, I suddenly understood that the apocalypse had truly arrived, and being a survivor meant being alone. My stomach growled twice. I went downstairs in my plain pajamas. In the kitchen, I made a simple sandwich. Then I made a cup of soy milk. The German Shepherd was still lying obediently in the yard corner. He did not bark or run around. Come here. I opened the door and waved him over. The German Shepherd hurried toward me, favoring that injured leg. He whimpered and rubbed against my pant leg. I glanced at his bowl, already licked clean. Then I dug another piece out of the kitchen. I added a cooked steak to his bowl. I also poured in some water. Arf, arf. Shut up. I scolded him under my breath. Then I smacked him on the forehead. No barking. Bark again, and you're out. The German Shepherd seemed to understand me. He gave 2 pitiful little whines. Then he folded his legs and lay down by my feet. He licked the hem of my pants, trying to make peace. Ugh. Ugh. You are filthy. I lifted my foot to dodge the German Shepherd's touch. After that fight with the zombie, the German Shepherd reeked from head to tail. I had no idea what filth he had rubbed against. After putting up with it for a while, I finally gritted my teeth. I found a rope inside the house. Then I roped the German Shepherd and dragged him into the villa. Who knew what his paws had stepped in? But they left a clear trail of black prints across the floor. Resigned to my fate, I brought out a large basin. After filling it with warm water, I looked at the German Shepherd tied in the corner. You stink. Come here. Bath time. The German Shepherd whined and backed up 2 steps. He looked like he wanted nothing to do with water. There was no helping it. I had to grab him myself and dump him into the basin. I squeezed out my own body wash and rinsed him several times. Then I gave him a quick rub down with a dry towel. After that, I let him go sun himself in the yard. Maybe because he had not been eating well at the dock. The German Shepherd's coat was dull. He also had several old scars. Around his neck was a heavy iron collar. Still, at least he was lucky enough to run into me, after all. Who knew what the dock looked like by now? On the second day of the zombie outbreak, I used the binoculars Mom had left behind to check the general situation across the island. There were about a dozen villas on the island. They were scattered in different areas, but only 5 or 6 households were actually occupied. The nearest household belonged to a Yorkish man. The man was here on vacation. He had brought his young mistress here for a private little getaway. Next closest was an elderly couple. According to Mom, the husband had once been a powerful business magnate from Arden. In recent years, he had handed his businesses over to his son. Then he brought his wife to the island for a quiet life. I was not very familiar with the other households. They also lived on the other side of Haven Island. They were still some distance from my house. For now, I did not need to worry about them. Online, more and more videos and posts about people being chased by zombies flooded the internet. Some people were even live streaming what the zombies looked like. As panic spread, more and more states were falling to the zombies. Plenty of people tried to flee the quarantine cities. For a while, plane, boat, and train tickets all cost a fortune. Some people cried and shouted, begging anyone who would listen for a ticket out of Lytton. Some were even willing to bankrupt themselves to escape. As for the government, it was still doing absolutely nothing. Those officials spent all day in front of the media, railing about the horrors of terrorism, and cursing Selborne for its supposedly sinister motives. Meanwhile, inside I saw friends studying abroad. They were venting on social media, because the zombie virus had broken out in life, and the government had failed to enforce strict controls. The virus had leaked beyond its borders. Now plenty of zombies had appeared in Selborne too. People all across Selborne were furious. If the zombie crisis right now had not been a grave threat to all human survival, I figured the two countries might have gone to war. The state where my school was located had already fallen into total chaos. All business and industry had collapsed. The streets were full of wandering zombies. The survivors were all hiding at home, outside the window. The Yorkish man was still lying on the beach, sunbathed. The woman, in a bikini, was beside him, grilling fish they had just caught from the sea. They seemed to have no idea what the outside world had become. Sophie called me again. On the other end, she had deep dark circles under her eyes. She was hiding under her blanket, softly sobbing as she told me how terrifying it was outside. Sophie, don't be scared. I sighed softly. As long as you stay home and do not go out, you should be able to hold out until rescue arrives. Did you spend all the money I sent you? Sophie shook her head. Not all of it. Dad and I were still buying supplies when we ran into zombies. We barely made it back to the car and escaped. I frowned. Then how much did you buy? How long can you survive on it? Sophie blinked at me blankly. I don't know. Mom and Dad bought it. Sometimes Sophie was hopeless at basic life stuff. I really could not count on her for this. Is your family still short on anything? Sophie paused. Then, she shook her head again. Do you have enough water? I'm worried the water might go out later. I had no choice but to ask her directly. And power. That could go down later too. Sophie stared at me in a daze. Water. Dad bought a lot of jugs. But power. I sighed. Mom really had not left me much time. There was nowhere near enough time for Sophie's family to install solar panels. No matter what. Try not to go outside. It is too dangerous out there. Make do at home, for now. Once the virus passes, things will be all right. I had no other way to help. All I could do was try to comfort Sophie. After I hung up with Sophie, I was wondering whether I should clear out the yard, pull up all the flowers and plants, and plant some fast-growing vegetables, when a knock sounded outside the door. Woof. Before I could react, the German shepherd sprang alertly to his feet and barked straight at the door. Shut up. I snapped at him at once. Then I grabbed the German shepherd by the scruff and dragged him deeper into the villa. The villa's soundproofing was excellent, even if the German shepherd howled inside. People outside could barely hear it. I decisively shut the German shepherd in the storage room. Then I checked this situation outside through the video intercom by the door. It was Mrs. Whitaker from the Ardenian household. She was standing outside, leaning on her cane. In her hands was a fresh plate of homemade macaroni. Macaroni was one of Mom's favorite foods. I had heard Mom mention before that the old lady made especially good macaroni. Mrs. Whitaker must have thought Mom had arrived and brought the macaroni over on purpose. After hesitating for a while, I still decided not to open the door. Mrs. Whitaker waited for a bit. When no one came to answer, she had no choice but to walk back, step by step with her cane. I ran upstairs to look outside. Just as Mrs. Whitaker passed the Yorkish man's place, the mistress seemed to be mocking her. But after only a few words, Mr. Whitaker came over with his shotgun in hand. He glared fiercely at the mistress and helped Mrs. Whitaker walk back. I let out a soft sigh. Then I stopped watching them. On day 3 of the zombie outbreak, the government's lies collapsed under the flood of videos online. This time, not even officials were left on camera to calm the public. Everyone was fleeing in blind panic. That also meant that beyond Lytton, zombie outbreaks quickly began appearing in other countries too. More and more regions fell. News like this was impossible to miss, no matter how cut off you were. The Yorkish man and his mistress had stopped going out these past 2 days. The elderly Ardenian couple stayed behind closed doors completely. The Whitakers had lived on Haven Island for quite some time. As far as I knew, they grew some vegetables in their yard. They also dried seafood from time to time, so supplies should not be a problem for them right away. I was even thinking that if I managed to contact Mom, I would ask whether we should help the old couple. But, while I was alone, there was no way I dared open the door lightly. But before Mom ever called, something happened. Ever since Mrs. Whitaker came by with the macaroni, and the German Shepherd let out that bark, I suddenly realized I could not keep this damn dog out in the yard anymore. If he barked a few more times, the whole island would know my house had both a person and a dog inside, and if zombies had reached the island too, he would probably draw the infected straight to us. So I decided to keep the German Shepherd inside the villa. When Mom first built this villa, soundproofing had been her top priority, so no matter which room I shut the German Shepherd in, nothing could be heard from outside the yard. Still, thankfully, this German Shepherd did not bark often. That day, I was training the mutt to exercise on the treadmill, when I suddenly spotted the Yorkish man show up at the elderly Ardenian couple's gate. He had even brought his young mistress with him. I quickly dug out Mom's binoculars and looked that way. The mistress looked fragile and weak. Standing against a tree with one hand over her stomach, the Yorkish man was knocking on the old couple's door. They seemed to speak through the video intercom. For a while, I saw Mr. Whitaker gripping his shotgun as he walked out, step by step. He tossed a bag of supplies beside the gate, then backed into a safe area, before using the smart gate system to open the yard entrance. Once the gate opened, the Yorkish man spotted the bag by the gate at once, but he did not seem satisfied with that. He looked Mr. Whitaker's yard up and down. In the end, I had no idea how Mr. Whitaker and the Yorkish man negotiated. After some book and forth, the Yorkish man took the bag and left with his young mistress. But I felt this was far from over. Although the Yorkish man had not come to my house, his behavior still made me feel deeply unsafe. At that moment, I desperately wished Mom would appear in front of me soon. On day 5 of the zombie outbreak, regions had fallen in countries all over the world. The virus was tearing across the planet. Sophie called me every day, every time. She cried until she could barely breathe. She cried herself into exhaustion, then fell asleep. But other than comforting her, there was nothing else I could do. Sophie told me that lately, many people had tried going out to look for food, but none of them had made it back safely. If her family had not bought the supplies I told them to get, they probably would not have lasted this long. Ordinary families in Sophie's neighborhood were already running out of food, so the households on the island were probably running low too. The Yorkish man did not have the habit of storing food, and he had only come to the island for vacation, so his food supply would be the first to run dangerously low. Even though Mr. Whitaker had given him a bag of supplies, it probably would not last him long. After I started seeing the Yorkish man's behavior that way, I did not even dare sleep deeply at night. At the slightest sound, I would scramble up. Later, I even dragged the German Shepherd into my room to sleep. That night, it rained hard on this island. Rain was not especially common. Raindrops struck the leaves again and again, making a soft, rustling sound. They also covered up sounds no one was meant to hear. I was half asleep when I heard the usually quiet, well-behaved German Shepherd suddenly stand up. The sound of his paws hitting the floor jerked me awake at once. The German Shepherd stood by the window, staring outside. His eyes were locked on one spot. I quickly got out of bed, put on my shoes, and went to his side. The rain was pouring down. I could not clearly hear anything unusual, but I trusted that a dog's ears were sharper than mine, so I simply sat down beside the German Shepherd, hugging my stuffed toy, and forced myself to stay alert. After about 10 minutes, I still could not see anything in the pitch-black night. At most, I could see the lights on at the elderly Ardenian couple's house. Then, urgent knocking suddenly sounded outside the yard. In that instant, my heart leapt into my throat. At the same time, the German Shepherd opened his mouth to bark. I reacted before I could think, and clamped his muzzle shut. Then I dragged him into the storage room and shut him in. Still in my slippers, I hurried downstairs, and ran to the video intercom. The one knocking was Mrs. Whitaker again. She was covered in mud and rainwater. Her cane was gone, lost somewhere. She was trembling all over, pressing the doorbell while looking back over her shoulder. Had she run into zombies? Or had someone robbed her? I did not dare make a move. First, I was afraid the zombie virus had appeared on the island too. If I let Mrs. Whitaker in, she might turn right in front of me. Second, I was afraid of bringing trouble down on myself. These past few days, I had not even turned on the lights at home. I was terrified someone would realize the house was occupied. Even so, because of the German Shepherd, Mrs. Whitaker had already noticed something was off. My combat ability was too low. No matter what kind of accident happened, I could not handle it. I did not dare stand there by the door either, so I scurried to the monitoring room. Mom had prepared this safe house as if she had seen all of this coming. Of course, that meant security cameras across the entire villa, plus the inside and outside of the yard. There were more than 10 cameras in total. I quickly pulled up the 2 feeds outside the yard. One faced the yard gate, so I could see the video intercom area. The other pointed farther out beyond the gate. Mrs. Whitaker was still standing at the entrance. She was speaking in Ardenian, saying things I could not understand. It sounded like fear, and also like a curse, just as my conscience was being torn apart. Mrs. Whitaker seemed to suddenly see something terrifying. She stopped knocking, turned, and ran. I was still confused when, through the rainy night, I faintly made out the figure of a man in a hooded sweatshirt. It was the Yorkish man. The hood was pulled over his head. He was holding a short knife. His whole body seemed swallowed by the darkness. Maybe he wondered why Mrs. Whitaker had come knocking. He glanced toward the video intercom beside the gate. Because I had not enabled access, he could not see anything. But that one glance still filled me with deep fear. Fortunately, he did not stay long. Soon, he turned and vanished into the rain. I was terrified. I was scared. I did not dare think too deeply about where Mr. Whitaker, who had always adored his wife, had gone. Nor did I know whose blood the Yorkish man's knife had been stained with, or was about to be stained with. That night, I sat in the monitoring room, staring hard at every security feed. In my hand, I gripped a fruit knife tightly. At last, dawn broke. The dark clouds withdrew. The rain slowly faded to a stop. The air was filled with a damp, salty smell of sea wind. Nothing had happened all night. That gave me just enough courage to climb up to the second floor. Through the binoculars, I looked toward the Whitaker villa. The rain seemed to have washed away every trace of sin. If I had not stayed awake all night, I might have wondered whether last night's events had only been a nightmare. There was not a single mark on the road. Everything was as quiet as usual. Not long after that, I saw someone come out of the Yorkish man's villa. It was the mistress. She walked all the way to the Whitaker villa and knocked. I had not seen the mistress at all last night. I did not understand why she was knocking on the Whitaker's door now. However, my confusion was answered almost immediately. The ones who opened the door were not Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker. It was the Yorkish man. After he opened the door, he acted as if it were his own home. He rubbed his sleep-tousled hair, then went into the yard, got some cold water, and washed up. The mistress seemed to say something to him. Then the two of them went inside. All louis de from beginning to end. I never saw a trace of the elderly Ardenian couple. Deep down, I had an answer. An answer that terrified me beyond words. I never imagined the zombie virus would not be what ravaged the island. Instead, people had started killing first. Buzz, buzz. My phone suddenly vibrated softly. I quickly picked it up and answered. Ethan, it's bad. It's really bad. On the other end of the phone, Sophie was crying without lowering her voice for the first time. My heart sank hard again. What happened? A neighbor found out about our food. He threatened that if we don't give him some, he'll expose us in the homeowners group chat and get everyone to come steal our food. Sophie was crying so hard she could barely breathe, but she still explained it clearly. Did you give him any? I asked, quickly. Food was running out, right? The Yorkish man trapped on the island had probably done it to seize the elderly Ardenian couple's food. So of course Sophie would run into the same kind of people and the same kind of danger. I only regretted not making that clear to Sophie from the start. We gave him some. Sophie sniffled softly. My dad said, if things keep going like this, the government won't be able to send rescue anytime soon. Water, power, and internet will go down soon. As long as we hold out until the power and internet cut off, his threat won't matter anymore. I quietly let out a breath of relief. That's good. Your dad's plan is already the best option right now. I know. Hide everything well. Do not open the door lightly. If you have to, do whatever it takes. I was afraid Sophie might go soft for one moment and save someone she should not save. Okay. Sophie answered softly again. She seemed to have more to say, but held back. Sophie, is there something you want to say? Ethan. Sophie's voice sounded deeply conflicted. My parents wanted me to ask if our family could come hide at your place for a while. I forgot how I ended the call. Maybe the moment Sophie finished asking, I reacted before I could think and hung up. Or maybe the crackling static kept her from hearing me, and the call dropped. All I knew was, the moment Sophie asked that question, a bone-deep chill suddenly rose inside me, along with my guard snapping to its highest point. That strange dream kept replaying in my head, and the Yorkish man's figure last night had left an even darker shadow. Deep down, I knew, given my relationship with Sophie, I should not have reacted that way. Mom had poured her heart and soul into this villa. She had told me many times that if the viral breach ever truly happened, I absolutely must not bring anyone here. Sophie's request put me in an impossible position. I admit it. I was selfish. I was cowardly. I was afraid to die. I was afraid Sophie's family might bring the zombie virus with them. I was also afraid that if Sophie's family stayed in the villa too long, they might start thinking they could take over the place. I was truly scared. But I despised myself for being like that. Sophie and I had been good friends for 5 years. Back then, I had just arrived in Leiden. I still had a heavy accent. I did not like dealing with people. Most of the time, I only talked to people from back home. No one was quick to accept me, the transfer student. Only Sophie did. She would speak to me gently. She would tell me things about the school. She helped me fix my accent and improve my grades. I should never have abandoned her out of fear. but I still did. And now, I had even rejected her request. She must have been devastated. Maybe angry, too. She would think I was stingy and disloyal. I did not dare think any further. I found the satellite phone Mom had left me in the cabinet. Then I called Mom's satellite phone. I waited for a long time. So long that I thought no one would answer. Then the satellite phone connected. Mom, what's wrong? Mom's familiar voice and tone came through the satellite phone. I quickly held back my tears and said with a smile, nothing. When will you get here? In about 3 to 5 days. Why so long? Normally, Mom was not that far from here. It should not have taken that long. Mimi, there are some things I have to do. Stay home and wait for me. Sweetheart, do not open the door for anyone except me. I paused for a moment. Then, I nodded heavily. Mom? Do not worry. I'm fine. The house is safe. On her end, Mom seemed to let out a cold snort. She muttered a few words under her breath. Then she sounded impatient, ready to hang up. I have to go. I've still got zombies on my end. The second she finished speaking, the call was already dead. Listening to the cold, busy tone on the line, my heart settled a little. Mom was not often by my side, but every time I finished a call with her, I felt a little safer. It had been that way since I was a kid. Once I knew when Mom would arrive. The heart lodged in my throat finally eased down a little. For the next 2 days, the Yorkish man and his young mistress made no further moves, but now and then, I saw them, pointing toward my house. It seemed, if nothing unexpected happened, I would be their next target, and I had zero combat ability. All I could do was pray Mom came back soon. At the same time, to keep the German Shepherd from barking at the wrong moment, I spent those 2 days training him. If throwing him out right now would not draw even more attention from the Yorkish man, I really would have tossed the mud out. The first sign that the training was working came when a helicopter suddenly arrived on the island. The German Shepherd heard it before I did. He rushed over while I was cooking, whining under his breath, looking extremely anxious. Before I could react, I heard the faint thrum of a helicopter overhead. I quickly put down what I was holding and ran upstairs. The helicopter swept steadily over the roof and trees, then landed on the small helipad at the highest point of Haven Island. My guard shot up again. I did not believe for a second that helicopter was here for a rescue. After all, there were not many people on this island, and even fewer knew it existed. There was no way a rescue from Lytton's government could arrive this fast, which meant there was only one possibility. Someone had come to this island for shelter. I watched carefully for a while. After the helicopter landed, sure enough, a group of people got out under mercenary protection. They carried bags large and small, then hurriedly vanished down the wooded path from the helipad. Of course, I was not the only one who noticed the change. So did the Yorkish man and his young mistress. I saw it, clearly. The Yorkish man and his mistress seemed to have an argument. Every so often, they pointed toward the helicopter on the island. The new arrivals were probably what they were arguing about. If their focus shifted to those newcomers from now on, that would be good news for me. Unfortunately, things almost never go that smoothly. In the end, they still set their sights on my house. A shrill scream tore through the air. It shattered the quiet before I could even run upstairs to check. The video intercom at the door rang. At the same time, frantic knocking came with it. The German Shepherd had been lying obediently at my feet. Then he shot to his feet. I quickly gestured for him to stay quiet. I softened my footsteps and moved to the video intercom. On the intercom screen, the Yorkish man's young mistress was tear-streaked and pitiful. She knocked on the door while staring desperately at the video intercom. Her clothes were disheveled. Maybe she thought someone was inside my house. I did not make a sound. I only heard her sobbing through the intercom. Help. Please, help me. I'm begging you. Her words mixed English with a language I could not understand, but I still caught the key parts. She said the Yorkish man had held her captive and cut her off on the island. Recently, she had found out she was pregnant, but that man had been abusing her. Today, she escaped while he was asleep. She hoped I would take her in. How could I possibly believe her? For all I knew, the Yorkish man was hiding around some corner, waiting to pounce the moment I opened the door. Or, after I let her in, she could work with the Yorkish man from the inside. The Whitakers were a warning right in front of me. I still had not seen any sign of them. How could I dare let her in? The mistress cried by herself for a long, long time. When there was still no movement inside, her sobs slowly faded. She glared at the video intercom, confused and angry. Then she turned and left the intercom camera's view. I hurried into the monitoring room, so I could watch their movements from every angle. But to my surprise, the young mistress did not go back to the Yorkish man. Instead, she circled my yard, then tried to climb the wall. The sight nearly made my heart leap out of my chest. The instant her hand touched the top of the wall, there was a sharp crackle. I could even see the current snapping clearly. Before the woman could react, she let out a scream and fell. Right? Mom had installed an electrified fence too. In that moment, I was beyond grateful that Mom had been so cautious, like she had seen all this coming. After falling from the wall, The mistress lay on the ground for a long time before slowly crawling up. She shot a hateful glare at the electrified fence on top of the wall, then limped away. If the first try failed, there would definitely be a second, to protect my safe house. I rolled up my sleeves and prepared a few things. For example, guns. Ladon did not ban guns. With power, money, and the right connections, there was almost nothing you could not get. Mom had still gone to a lot of trouble to get them. My aim was not great, but at least I knew how to fire. That alone could act as a deterrent. Now, all I had to do was wait for the Yorkish man to show up. The German Shepherd obediently stayed by my side, and did not make noise unless he had to. The only downside was that he ate more than I did every day. I could only comfort myself by thinking that having a dog often meant he could sense danger before I did when he came to attack my house. The Yorkish man chose a dark, windy night. The German Shepherd proved exactly why I had kept him. He started whining beside me early on, warning me that someone was coming this way. I did not even have time to wash up. I grabbed a gun and bullets and ran straight to the 3rd floor. This time, the Yorkish man seemed to circle the area very cautiously. Then he had his young mistress stay nearby and keep watch for him. At first, he tried to pry open the yard gate. After fumbling with it for ages, all he could do was kick the gate in frustration. I had to admit, that gate's security level was seriously high. If he could not get in through the gate, then he could only climb the wall. The Yorkish man dragged over a ladder from somewhere and tried to climb in without touching the electrified fence. But the fence covered the entire top of the wall. He could not find anywhere to set his foot. I thought he would give up there. Instead, from inside his clothes, he pulled out a pair of insulated gloves. Little by little, he tested the edge of the electrified fence. I was wondering whether to fire a warning shot when one of his legs had already crossed the wall. His other leg was carefully sliding over into the yard. Bang! Bang! The bullet grazed past the Yorkish man's leg and struck a tree trunk nearby. The Yorkish man's face darkened instantly. His young mistress looked at him with even greater worry. I did not dare speak, but the warning was obvious. The Yorkish man rattled off a long string of words. Then, apparently worried I would not understand, he repeated it in English. The gist was that he had not meant to disturb me. It was just that his girlfriend was pregnant, and they had already run out of food. He also thought no one lived in my house. So, he came looking for something to eat. Seeing that devoted, sincere look on his face, if I had not seen him slaughter Mrs. Whitaker and then steal her home, I might actually have believed him. Too bad. I knew everything. Bang. I fired another shot. My refusal was unmistakable. The Yorkish man cursed in words I could not understand. Then he dragged his feet and climbed back over the wall. This time, he accidentally touched the middle of the electrified fence. Not even the insulated gloves could save him. He flipped over and crashed straight to the ground outside. His young mistress rushed over to comfort him, while cursing toward my house. People like that, even if they had not killed the Whitakers, would never be grateful for anyone's kindness. I thought that, at this point, the matter was over for now, but I never expected that. Before dawn even broke, the Yorkish man would come back. This time, the Yorkish man did not climb the wall. He did not beg again, either. He simply raised a shotgun and fired straight at my window. The gunshot scared the hell out of me, but to my surprise and relief, Mom had actually installed bulletproof glass. The Yorkish man's bullets were no threat to me at all. What kind of island villa was this? This was clearly my turtle shell, the ultimate defensive setup. Discovering the bulletproof glass made the Yorkish man even more furious and flustered. He aimed at my front door and fired several more shots. A string of gunshots rang across the island. I narrowed my eyes. I opened the window, just a narrow crack, and raised my gun. My aim was terrible, but I was furious. He had provoked me again and again. Bang! The bullet shot out, carrying all my anger with it, and drove straight into the Yorkish man's arm. T-C-H. So close. The Yorkish man screamed and clutched his arm, then turned and ran. Running. Now, he knew to run. Wasn't it a little late for that? Bang. I kept the gun raised and fired another shot with deadly focus. This one hit him in the thigh. The bullet instantly took his leg out from under him. He crashed to the ground. At that moment, his mouth no longer spat out those ugly, incomprehensible curses. Fear swallowed him whole, just as it had once swallowed the Whitakers. I saw him crying and howling at me, begging for mercy, dragging the leg that could barely support him. As he crawled behind a tree, bang! This shot whistled past his scalp. What a shame. He disappeared completely into the trees. I had no chance to fire a fourth shot after that. Even if he still wanted to, he probably could not set his sights on my house again. With the German Shepherd beside me, I slept soundly. I slept until noon, when hunger woke me up. Once the anger faded, the delayed fear finally surged up in me. That window I had cracked open. If I could shoot out through it, then someone could shoot in through it, too. And then there was my godful aim. I had to admit, my luck was genuinely good. To reward my brave little self and soothe my poor, fragile heart, I made myself an extremely generous lunch: mushroom shrimp soup, blanched lettuce, stir-fried beef cubes, plus a bowl of rice. I rewarded myself. The German Shepherd had done his part, so he could not be left out. I opened a can of beef for him right away, with beef, liver, a tomato, and a bowl of white rice. One man and one dog dug in happily. On day 15 of the zombie outbreak, something happened at Sophie's house. Sophie did not explain exactly what was going on. By then, ordinary cell service was already terrible. I could only hear a few broken sentences from her. Ethan, my home is not safe anymore. Can I hide at your place? I still had to face the question I had been trying to avoid. But you do not know which island I am on. And right now, there is no boat you can take here. The journey is not safe, either. I did not know whether Sophie could hear what I was saying clearly. I just kept talking on my own, because I did not want them coming to find me. The signal kept cutting in and out, and finally disconnected by itself. I sat by the window, looking at the deep blue sea not far away, and let out a soft sigh. I did not know how many supplies Mom had prepared. I also did not know whether Sophie's family, later on, might turn against me and Mom over those supplies. I did not know whether their arrival might bring the virus with them. There were too many uncertainties. Selfish and cowardly as I was, I could not bring myself to take them in. I did not know what Sophie would think of me. I could only hope Sophie had used the money I gave her to buy enough supplies. Because of the sea winds and tides, yachts and boats had trouble approaching the island during the day. Only at night was there any chance of reaching it. That was why, back then, I had to reach the island before dawn, to make sure I did not miss Mom's call. I had kept the radio phone beside my pillow for days. I was terrified I would miss her telling me to open the door. After days of waiting and hoping, the radio phone rang. Mom's voice came through, tired but relieved. Sweetheart, open the door. That long-awaited voice snapped me awake at once. I did not even stop for the baffled German Shepherd, and practically bounced downstairs to open up. Mom still looked sharp and heroic, standing at the door with a faint smile for me. She had something in tow. I backed away again and again in terror. Woof! At some point, the German Shepherd had come to my side. He barked straight at Mom and the zombie behind her. Quiet. I quickly snapped at him. Then I turned toward the zombie behind Mom. Mom, what is this? Mom tugged the zombie, which moved like a puppet on strings, then helped me back up. There were no zombies on the island, so I caught one for research. I froze for a second. The villa did have a private laboratory. I had originally thought Mom had built it for ordinary experiments at home. I never imagined it was meant for keeping zombies. Mom hauled the zombie into the yard and swiftly shut the gate. Woof! The German Shepherd kept baring his teeth at the zombie. Only my command kept him from barking too loudly. Mom narrowed her eyes at the German Shepherd. Since when did you get a dog, sweetheart? I found him. I glanced warily at the zombie behind Mom. Let's go inside first. Okay. Mom nodded slightly, followed behind me, and dragged the zombie into the house, because I was still deeply afraid of that utterly unresponsive zombie. Once Mom came inside, she took the zombie straight to the lab and locked it in. Is there anything to eat? I am starving. Mom took off her filthy coat and boots. In the kitchen. In the kitchen, make something for me. Mom raised an eyebrow at me, made a heart gesture, then turned and headed for the bathroom. I resigned myself and went to the kitchen. I cooked Mom a bowl of egg and greens noodles and brought her a glass of milk. By the time the noodles were ready, Mom was toweling her short hair dry. When did you cut your hair? In my memory, Mom had always had long black hair. I had rarely seen her with short hair, looking so sharp and heroic. I cut it right after everything went wrong. Mom gave it a few careless rubs, then tossed the towel aside. Long hair gets in the way. Yeah, I answered softly. It looks good like this, too. This dog. Mom slurped a mouthful of noodles. Are we fattening him up? I rolled my eyes at Mom. Then I herded the German Shepherd back to his storage room. Mom, when will this virus end out there right now? Mom shook her head. Lytton's situation is not looking good. There are no surviving states left. Other countries are falling to it too, more or less. That is why I had to bring back a zombie for experiments. The institute is completely unusable now. During this time, I went to the institute and to a few colleagues to get the experimental data on this virus. Hopefully, I can figure something out. I glanced toward the laboratory. My face was full of conflict. Are we just keeping that zombie here? Relax. It can't get out. Mom waved it off. This thing only spreads through saliva and blood. As long as you don't make out with it, you won't turn. Mom had officially grossed me out. You eat. I am going upstairs. Hold it. Mom suddenly set down her chopsticks. She pointed toward the storage room. When are you killing it? I shot her a fierce eye roll. Just eat your noodles. That dog survived life and death with me. Do not touch him. TCH. Survived life and death. Huh? Your mother risked everything for you too. You know. I waved her off and went upstairs. Over the next few days, Mom spent nearly all day shut inside her lab. She only came out at mealtimes to place orders with me. So, I spent even more time cooking at home. Every morning, I woke up and made Mom a simple breakfast. Then I went back to sleep. When I woke again, I made lunch. After lunch, I trained the German Shepherd for a while, kept an eye on the Yorkish man's place, and then it was time to make dinner. After a full week in the laboratory, Mom came out on the last day, looking defeated. She was distracted even while eating. I may need to go out again. Why? Mom's words startled me. Where are you going? To find someone. What kind of person? Why do you need him? Are you sure he hasn't turned into a zombie? Mom's eyes, shadowed by heavy dark circles, looked at me with exhaustion. For once, she gently ruffled my hair. Do not worry. Mom knows what she's doing. Besides, I'm not leaving right away. I frowned. I was not satisfied with their answer. He was one of the researchers on the virus project. Some details are only known to the people involved. Because Mom had refused to approve human trials, the institute had sent her home for a while. She had not been able to follow the experiments, so she did not know the full situation. She later went back to gather more information. But her superiors were wary of her, and did not let her join the later experiments. I need to confirm his condition first, then decide. On day 25 of the zombie outbreak, I got a call from Sophie. With the internet and power both down now, even Mom and I had to use the radio phone to contact each other. I had no idea how Sophie's call had managed to get through. Ethan, I am here, but I cannot get over there right now. Can you help me? Sophie's words left me completely confused. Mom, sitting on the sofa, looked at me in confusion, too. Sophie, where are you? Through the phone, I could faintly hear sea wind howling, and the rumble of a boat engine. I am outside the island where your house is. The wind and current are against us here. The fishing boat cannot reach shore. Can you come help us? In Sophie's voice, there was already a heavy tremor of tears and exhaustion. My brows knitted together. Where? Off the island, where my house is. Because Mom had warned me again and again. I had only let it slip to Sophie once, that Mom had bought a villa on an island, but I had definitely never told her the island's exact coordinates. My questioning left Sophie with no idea how to explain. Her stammering, evasive attitude made my heart sink even further. Let me explain. On Sophie's end, the phone seemed to be snatched away by someone else. Hello, Ethan? I am Sophie's boyfriend. Hearing Sophie's boyfriend's voice, my expression darkened even more. Sophie had not only come to the island in secret, she had brought her boyfriend too. No wonder. Sophie's boyfriend studied communications engineering. He was probably the one who helped Sophie reach me. Go on. Something happened to Sophie's family. I heard the place where you are staying is very safe. Could you take us in for a while? I let out a cold laugh. Do you still need my permission? Aren't you already here? Sophie's boyfriend paused. Our arrival is abrupt, I know, but you may not understand what the outside world has turned into by now. You and Sophie were so close. For the sake of that friendship, please shelter us for a while. I looked at Mom, who was watching like this was entertainment. Fury burned through me. Friendship? You want to talk to me about friendship? Did I not warn her when things first went wrong? I even transferred her $1 million to buy supplies. I have done more than enough, haven't I? All my resentment and blame towards Sophie erupted completely after her boyfriend pushed me. There is no way I am letting you into my home. If you can get ashore on your own, that is not my problem. But do not come near me, Ethan.
Ethan?
You cannot treat people like this. The phone was snatched away again. It sounded like Sophie's mother. You and Sophie used to be so close. Now you will not even shelter us for a while. I took a deep breath, trying hard to hold back my anger. Mrs. Lane, my family does not have many supplies left either. When my mom prepared this place, she stocked it for 2 people. You showed up without even warning me first. I do not even know how many of you there are. If you decide to kill for what we have, wouldn't I be letting you walk all over me? Ethan, what kind of thing is that to say? Sophie's mother cursed in fury. You and Sophie used to be so close. Sophie gave you so much, and now you are heartless and ungrateful. Have you no shame? What did I take from her? The most valuable thing Sophie ever gave me was this watch. Suddenly, I understood how Sophie had found the island. I never imagined that her so-called birthday wish was actually meant to track my location. I ripped the watch off my wrist and smashed it hard onto the floor. The watch shattered into pieces. That still was not enough to vent my rage, so I stomped on it several more times. Sophie Lane, you were spying on me. Sophie's sobbing grew louder on the other end. No, that is not it. Sophie's boyfriend explained for her. The watch came with a built-in location system. Sophie did not install it. His words indirectly admitted that they really had found me through the watch. Then how did you know the island's location when she bought the watch? Sophie paired it with her own phone to test it. I gave a harsh, cold laugh. Sophie Lane, we both know exactly what this is. Do not try to sell me a fairy tale. Do you really think I would believe that garbage? Ethan. Sophie's voice returned to the phone. I never meant you any harm. I just wanted a shelter with you. My home was robbed. My dad is hurt too. We truly have nowhere left to go. Enough. Stop wasting breath. Mom snatched the phone from my hand. Then she shut it off. You do not need to agonize over it. I do not agree. I paid for this house. I hired people to build every system in it. If I say she cannot stay, she cannot stay. So stop dragging this out with them. A location tracker hidden in a watch. Sophie Lane had truly given Mom and me a new kind of shock. But better safe than sorry. Mom still set aside her current experiment for the moment. She stayed upstairs all day, scanning the sea with her high-powered binoculars. Sure enough, a battered fishing boat set on the horizon. It hovered at a cautious distance. Mom, I am sorry. If I had not trusted Sophie Lane, no one would have brought a dangerous threat to our safe house. Mom rolled her eyes at me. You're an idiot. I know that much. Without my help. Sophie Lane's little fishing boat could only stay at that same cautious distance, floating offshore beyond the coastline. Only after night fell, and the sea wind began to shift. As the tide slowly rose, did they gradually approach the shore. Mom shot me several more annoyed looks. Then she chased me up to the 3rd floor. Supposedly because out of sight meant out of mind. Mom stayed on the 2nd floor. She dragged a chair over and sat by the window. Several guns and boxers of bullets were laid out beside her. She looked like she was holding the line, as if she owned the place. I did not understand why Sophie Lane was so dead set on coming to me, but I was truly disappointed in her. If she only wanted somewhere to shelter, then anywhere on Haven Island would have been safe. But if she came dragging the whole group to me, I looked down through the 3rd floor glass. Mom already had her gun set up. Then, what waited for Sophie would be Mom's bullet. At last, I watched their group stagger ashore. Step by step, they trudged toward my side of the island. Besides Sophie Lane and her mother, there were her boyfriend and his parents. At the back, they dragged a human shape wrapped in a black bag. Sophie's boyfriend supported her as they walked toward my house. Before I crushed the watch, they must have memorized my location. I let out a long sigh. Fine. The decision was no longer mine. Bung. Bung. Mom did not even bother wasting words on them. Once Sophie came within range, Mom fired. The bullet struck the grass one step in front of Sophie. It stopped her cold. I saw the terror and shock in their eyes. Ethan. Sophie started crying before she could speak. It is only for a little while. You still will not let us stay. Mom said nothing. Only silence, answered Sophie. Seeing Sophie sob without stopping, her boyfriend seemed to murmur comfort in her ear. At that moment, her mother could not hold back and rushed forward. Ethan, come out. Explain yourself clearly. What do you think you are doing? I was speechless. Why did Sophie's mother look as if I was some scumbag who had betrayed Sophie? How can you be so selfish? You and Sophie are so close. What is wrong with letting us stay for a while? It is not like we would take over your house, and we would not hurt you. How can you be so cold? If Sophie were in your place, she would come get you before you even had to ask. Mrs. Lane went on and on. Every word was either an accusation or a lecture. She acted like she had every right to take the moral high ground. Just when I figured Mom had heard enough, Sophie stepped forward. She forced back her tears. With eyes full of hurt and despair, she looked toward my house. Ethan, are you really unwilling to help? We have nowhere left to go now. I know you did not want me coming to the island to find you, and I know you must be furious right now about me tracking you, but I truly never meant you any harm. After all these years, what Sophie and I had was not fake. She had always been quiet and gentle. She had never once reached out to ask me for anything, and because she had never slipped up, I had trusted her so completely. I was even willing to give her $1 million to keep her alive, but I never imagined that my kindness would become her excuse to push her luck. I said nothing. There was nothing I could say. Bah. The gunshot rang out again. Only this time, it did not hit the grass at Sophie's feet. It hit Sophie's boyfriend, who was trying to climb in from another direction. This woman, who claimed she never meant me harm, had turned around and sent her boyfriend to sneak inside. So this was what she called harmless. Mom's aim was deadly precise. Sophie's boyfriend had been shot in the chest. He collapsed to the ground, barely alive. Sophie hurried 2 steps forward, but she was afraid Mom would shoot her, so she forced herself to stop. Instead, it was her boyfriend's parents, who had been timidly trailing at the back, who now rushed forward with no regard for their lives. Mom fired another warning shot to scare them off, but it did not stop them. The couple reached Sophie's boyfriend and dragged him through the danger to a tree on the other side. They tried to find cover from Mom's bullets. Mom had no intention of dealing with him right then. Her gun stayed trained on Sophie. Sophie seemed to realize the person holding the gun was not me. She hesitated, unsure whether to retreat first. Bang. 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 Another shot. Mom handled that gun like an expert. But to my surprise, this shot was not aimed at Sophie, nor was it aimed toward her boyfriend. It was aimed at Mrs. Lane, who had been guarding the black bag at the rear. Mrs. Lane had never seen anything like this. She screamed again and again in terror. At the same time, the black bag that had already been twitching suddenly thrashed even harder. Could it be they had tied up a person in there? Before I could figure it out, Mom fired several more shots in a row. Each one precisely severed the hemp ropes tied around the black bag. Fifth. With the ropes gone, the thing inside the bag broke free at once. Only, the man inside was still bound hand and foot. He had not fully escaped his restraints. I stared carefully, through the binoculars, at the bound man. It was Sophie's father. No, it was a zombie. I could not worry about anything else. I bolted downstairs. Mom. That is a zombie, I know. Mom was still posted by the window with the gun raised. Her face was cold and hard, and he is also Sophie's father. I never expected Sophie's father to have turned into a zombie. From the look of it, Sophie and Mrs. Lane must not have been able to abandon him. They had brought him with them to shelter on the island. But that also meant this island was no longer clean. No longer a zombie-free refuge. Hayambiha. When it comes to selfishness, who could possibly beat them? Mom gave a cold snort, the muzzle aimed at Sophie's father. She was ready to blow his head off with one shot. Sophie must have sensed what Mom intended. She turned and shouted for her mother to drag her father away. There was no way Mom would let them leave that easily. She fired several more shots in succession. One shot hit Sophie's father in the leg. Another struck him in the chest. Another hit Mrs. Lane in the lower back. Mrs. Lane lost all strength and collapsed the instant she was shot. Sophie rushed forward to pull her up. Sophie, alone, could not possibly carry off to people who could not move. I saw her look back toward us. Her eyes were a mess of conflicting emotions. In the end, she supported her mother and fled into the woods. Mom, what do we do? I looked at zombified Mr. Lane, still struggling on the ground. I must have looked helpless. The only zombie I'd dealt with so far was the one on the yacht that day. As for the one Mom brought back, I had not even seen it a second time. In my eyes, these zombies were like rabid dogs with terrifying strength. I had no ability to subdue one. Mom tossed the gun to me. Keep watch. I froze. My aim was awful. What was I supposed to do? Stare it down? Mimi. Mom nodded. She changed into bitter system leather gear, then added a pair of leather gloves. We could not just leave it lying outside. If it broke free, none of us would have a peaceful day again. But I started to speak, then stopped. Then, be careful. Mimi. Mom nodded. Once fully covered, she tucked a handgun into her belt and went out. That was more like it. She really should not trust my aim too much. After Mom opened the doors on her way out, she carefully shut each one behind her. I went to the window and watched the surroundings carefully. Mom made it smoothly to zombified Mr. Lane. When zombified Mr. Lane heard her footsteps, he roared desperately at her. That was my mom for you. With one sharp kick, she struck the back of zombified Mr. Lane's neck. It knocked him flat in an instant. But a zombie was still a zombie. It had no real sensation. It could not feel pain. Even after taking the blow to the neck, it still strained its head up, trying to bite Mom. Mom could not be bothered by its pathetic struggle. She inspected it carefully. After confirming the hemp ropes binding it were secure, she grabbed the back of zombified Mr. Lane's collar and dragged him back. I was about to meet her once she got close to the door, when something suddenly shot out of the woods. A thin but agile figure. It was Sophie. I had no time to think. I only knew that Sophie's appearance at that moment could not mean anything good. Bang. One shot hit Sophie in the heart. Another struck her forehead. The hand holding my gun was still shaking. Sophie had already fallen lifeless to the ground. Mom and I looked at each other. I saw the shock in her eyes. I could not tell which shot was mine, and which one Mom had fired. Either way, both wounds were fatal. No one could survive either shot. I was stunned that my aim had been so unexpectedly precise, and terrified that I had killed a living, breathing person. But I knew I had not been wrong. A few yards from Mom's feet, a sharp dagger lay on the ground. It had fallen from Sophie's hand. Sophie was good at throwing darts. I did not know, when she burst from the woods, whether she meant to throw the dagger at Mom, or take Mom hostage. Either way, she had not come with good intentions. Mom dragged zombified Mr. Lane all the way back home. Just like the zombie she had brought back before, she threw him into the lab. Zombified Mr. Lane's arrival made Mom temporarily put her plan to leave on hold. I had another dream. A bizarre dream. I dreamed Sophie had shed the gentle, quiet mask she used to wear. Her blood-stained hands were locked around my throat. She shook me hard. Sophie. Why couldn't you take us in? Why didn't you save us? Why did you have to kill me? The brutal suffocation left me unable to speak. It felt so vivid, it barely seemed like a dream. I struggled. My face flushed, dark red. My hands and feet thrashed wildly. I was like a dying fish. Bum. Bum. In the chaos, there seemed to be 2 gunshots. The pressure around my throat slowly loosened. On Sophie's smooth forehead, there was a bullet hole where a round had passed through. Blood was spreading heavily across her chest too. In a panic, I shoved Sophie away. I scrambled aside on hands and knees, looking around, but I did not see who had fired. Sophie collapsed to the ground. Blood kept pouring from her mouth. I did not understand how Sophie, shot through the brain, had not died instantly. Sophie lay on the ground. Blood from her chest soaked into the earth beneath her. Those eyes, usually so bright, stared hard at me. They were full of hatred. Ethan. I looked at her, timidly. I did not dare move closer. Ethan. She called my name. She screamed it, like her heart was being torn apart. Even as blood surged up, mouthful by mouthful, she kept calling. What? What? I asked, terrified and cautious. Coward. Sophie's voice grew quieter. Maybe she was running out of strength. Coward. What gives you the right? I stared at her, blankly. I had no idea what Sophie meant. What do you mean? What gives me the right? Ethan. But Sophie did not answer my question. She only murmured my name. Her hatred ran so deep. I almost thought she wanted to eat me alive. I curse you. I curse you to have no one left to protect you. I curse you to be torn apart by zombies. I curse everyone who loves you to die a horrible death. Every word of Sophie's curse was vicious. It left me confused, but anger rose with it, just like your dad. In that instant, something in my mind seemed to snap. For one blank second, my heart stopped, and I could not breathe. I shot to my feet. I glared back at Sophie with the same vicious look. Then I kicked her hard in the chest. I was not skinny, and I was not weak. That kick sent Sophie sliding a yard or 2 backward. My father, the man who had promised to always have my back, died in a car accident. While protecting me, he was gone. That was something I had only told Sophie once. Now it had become a barb in her mouth, meant to hurt me. Sophie was Sophie. All right, cruel enough, vicious enough. My kick was not Sophie's fatal wound, but it was the final chapter of her life. Sophie vomited blood in great mouthfuls. In the end, she did not even have the strength to cough up blood. She lay on the ground. Her last breath was completely gone. I collapsed, sitting on the ground. My heart was a mess of conflicting emotions. At last, the tears came pouring out, unstoppable. I opened my eyes. I touched my face. It was covered in cold tears. Outside, the sky was still pitch. By the dim light, I glanced at the alarm clock beside me. 3:26 a.m. I roughly wiped the tears from my face. Then I got out of bed. The laboratory lights were still on. Mom was still busy inside. I walked over, slowly. I knocked softly on the door. I looked in through the glass. Mom turned back to look at me. For a split second, surprise flashed in her eyes. Then she pressed the switch to open the door. Why are you here? Mom had not quite finished what she was doing. Wait a second. I am almost done. No, rush. I shook my head. I had no interest in the bottles and jars in Mom's hands. I looked toward the room, farther inside. 2 zombies lay quietly on the examination beds. Their hands and feet were restrained. It was the first time I had ever observed zombies so calmly and closely. Mom noticed what I was doing too.
Well,
not scared anymore. I did not answer. For the first time, I asked about Mom's experiment. Mom, can the virus be wiped out completely? Mom froze for a moment, only after she finished what she was holding. Did she look back at me? No. Her answer was firm and decisive. There was no room for doubt. My gaze fell on the lab vial in Mom's hand. Then, what is that for? A vaccine. I froze. I stared at Mom in shock. A defective prototype, Mom sighed. On my own, even with every surviving piece of research material and lab data, I still cannot make a finished vaccine. Can it be used? No. Mom shook her head. What is missing? The lead virus, the person Mom wanted to bring back. Where is he? Was he not infected by the virus? There are not many survivors left in lab. Mom shook her head. He had prepared long ago. As soon as the virus leaked, he ran. Then, do you know where he is? I do. Mom gave a sly smile. I got it out of him after getting him drunk. I froze for a second. Then I turned toward the 2 zombies lying quietly in the laboratory. Then, go. Mom was startled. Go early. Come back soon. I am a selfish person. That is why I did not save Mrs. Whitaker when she came begging for help. I am a selfish person. That is why I would rather give Sophie $1 million than let her come find me. I am a selfish person. That is why I shot Sophie dead when she tried to hurt Mom. I am a selfish person. But I could not selfishly snuff out the world's hope. The world outside had fallen into total chaos. More and more places were falling. More and more people were losing family and friends. Compared with that, I already had so much. I gave Mom a bright smile. I believe you'll come back safely. That bright smile shimmered with tears. Mom said nothing. She only stroked my head. The next afternoon, Mom left on the yacht she'd arrived in. I stood by the window. I watched Mom cut through the waves on the yacht until she gradually disappeared from sight. The following days were deceptively calm. Nothing happened. The German Shepherd ate and drank with me every day. Sometimes we went to the gym for a little exercise, with Mom gone. The German Shepherd actually played more freely with me. But how could the apocalypse ever offer truly peaceful days? From the far side of Haven Island, there came a massive explosion. Brilliant flames, thick black smoke, and gunfire rising and falling, all announced that this island was no longer peaceful. About half an hour later, the gunfire kept getting closer. They were coming this way. As far as I knew, on this island, only 6 houses had actually been finished and lived in. The rest were either unfinished or not even started. On my side were the Whitakers and the Yorkish men. There were 3 more on the other side. Among them was the largest villa, owned by the island's owner, Mr. Richard Mercer. If I was right, the man who got off that helicopter was Mr. Mercer. I kept watching through the binoculars. The German Shepherd stayed beside me, guarding me. Before long, several battered figures burst out of the woods. One of them was dressed in a suit, supported by 2 mercenaries. He stumbled toward the Whitaker villa. That was the villa where the Yorkish man and his mistress were staying. They seemed to pound on the door in a panic. The mistress opened it, clearly not understanding what was happening. They surged inside at once. Her slight frame could not stop them at all. They seemed to explain something to her. Or maybe they did not. Either way, after they quickly locked the front door behind them, they all rushed into the villa. At the same time, 2 figures crawled out of the bushes. They hammered desperately at the gate. I raised the binoculars and looked closer. They were Sophie's boyfriend's parents. No, they could no longer be called people. They were 2 zombies. Besides, zombified Mr. Lane. Had they brought other zombies ashore too? Or had the 2 zombies in the laboratory escaped? I hurried downstairs. The laboratory door was still firmly shut. The 2 zombies were still lying quietly on the lab tables. Then why had those 2 turned into zombies? And where had Sophie's boyfriend gone? Questions crowded my mind, but this was not the time to look for answers. I returned to the room and kept watching their side. Both zombies had burn marks on them. Their torn clothes hung in shreds from their bodies. They were both ramming the gate with everything they had. The villas on Haven Island were built fairly solid. The 2 zombies failed to break the door open, but I did not think it would end there. Zombies had no awareness. After ramming the door for a while, they heard no movement and stopped. But since there was no sound anywhere else, they kept wandering around that area. 2 or 3 days passed like that. Then an argument seemed to break out over there. The zombies started slamming into the front gate again, counting the days. This was already day 42 of the zombie outbreak. The food in the Whitaker's villa had probably been almost eaten up. And, with Mr. Mercer's group added in, they must have started fighting over how to divide the food. After they realized the zombies were ramming the gate again, they fell silent once more. This time, the gate was battered until it looked ready to collapse. If they did not come up with something soon, they would likely get torn apart by zombies. In the end, Mr. Mercer, with his mercenaries, made a decision. If I was not mistaken, they were coming to me. But I did not think Mr. Mercer's odds looked good. Mr. Mercer only had 2 mercenaries left now, but he still had his wife and 2 children with him, and the Whitaker villa was not exactly close to my place. They could be discovered at any moment on the way. Of course, Mr. Mercer definitely would not bring along the wounded Yorkish man and his mistress. I braced for a fight, and I waited to watch the show unfold. Somehow, they dragged over a ladder. First, one mercenary climbed out over a wall far from the gate. Then came Mr. Mercer and his family. The last mercenary brought up the rear. From start to finish, I never saw the Yorkish man or his mistress. I guessed that maybe, because of the food dispute, Mr. Mercer had taken them out. Or maybe he had simply abandoned them. I thought that, next, they would head straight in my direction. But through the binoculars, I saw the mercenary at the rear throw something into the yard. Boom. The huge blast made my heart jolt. It also made the zombies outside even more agitated. I immediately threw out my earlier guess. The Yorkish man and his mistress probably had not been killed. They had been left behind as bait to lure and stall the zombies. No wonder he was the kind of financier who could buy an island. His methods were ruthless and decisive. Under cover of the explosion, they finally sprinted in my direction. The 2 zombies soon rammed the tottering gate open. They rushed into the house. I took out the machine gun Mom had left me. I set it on the window, the way she had shown me. I opened only the narrowest crack I could. I knew they would not rush over blindly, and they would not scare as easily as the Yorkish man. 100 meters. 50 meters. 20 meters. 5 meters. Bang. Bang. The instant they stepped into machine gun range, I shot the lead mercenary in the right shoulder. They cursed and slowed down. they stopped charging straight ahead. Instead, each of them looked for cover. Mr. Mercer waved hard in my direction. Step by step, he slowly walked toward me. Ms. Leah, is that you? Mr. Mercer was trying to act familiar. Leah was the name Mom used in Lytton. I said nothing. Dear Ms. Leah, please forgive our rude visit. May we shelter in your home from the zombies for a while. My wife and 2 children have been starving for days. Bung. I fired a shot, 1 step in front of Mr. Mercer. I refused. If I could refuse Sophie, then I could definitely refuse them. Mr. Mercer's expression darkened. He kept pleading, earnestly. Dear Ms. Leah, I know you are a kind person. You must be worried we might bring infection or danger to you. That is, all right. My 2 mercenaries, and I will not go inside. Could you just let my wife and 2 children in? 1 woman and 2 children. It did sound like they posed no real threat, but I still refused. Trusting someone else's character with my life was the most ridiculous thing I could do. Mr. Mercer kept speaking with earnest desperation. I couldn't make out every word clearly. My gaze shifted to his wife and 2 children behind him. They did look harmless. Ms. Leah, please, I am begging you, give my children a chance to survive. When Mr. Mercer saw, I still would not give in. He looked desperate enough to drop to his knees. Too bad. I hated this kind of emotional blackmail most. I turned my head away impatiently. Then I suddenly noticed one of the mercenaries guarding them was missing. Alarm bells went off in my head. At last, near a corner of the wall below, I spotted that mercenary. He was holding a hooked grappling rope. He was about to throw it up and hook the roof or the eaves, so he could climb in with the leverage. They must have learned, from the Yorkish man, that my perimeter wall was electrified, so they had never planned to come through the front gate. Mr. Mercer used emotional blackmail to keep me distracted. While they pulled this dirty trick in secret, I let out a cold snort. I swung the gun around. Then I fired at the mercenary below. Because he was so close, my aim was steady. 1 shot blew his head open. The hooked grappling rope fell with him. Bang. Bang. A bullet grazed my right cheek. It left a bloody cut. Stunned, I looked up at the man, the mercenary I had shot first. His face was savage. His right arm hung limp. His left hand held up a gun. Death was so close. But in that instant, my brain seemed to seize up. I lost every sharp instinct and every emotion. Instead, I sank into an eerie calm. I pulled the gun back. Then I shut the window without hesitation. If that mercenary could aim precisely through that tiny crack and send a bullet in, then he could fire a 2nd shot and a 3rd, no matter what. Staying alive came first. If it came to it, I would retreat to the basement. After closing the window, I stared coldly at Mr. Mercer. Behind them, 2 zombies drawn by the noise were charging this way. Mr. Mercer clearly knew time was running out. He left the wounded mercenary to watch my side, while his family rushed toward my house. They all seemed to be wearing insulated gloves. One after another, they climbed over and jumped into the yard. Mr. Mercer caught his children one by one. His wife was last. She stepped onto the wounded mercenary for leverage. I seized the moment, just as Mr. Mercer's wife stepped onto the mercenary's shoulder. I opened the window decisively. I raised my handgun. Bung. The shot hit her neck. Blood kept gushing from the wound. Mrs. Mercer dropped it once. She fell right on top of the mercenary. I glanced at the frantic Mr. Mercer. Then I shut the window again. Mr. Mercer refused to abandon his wife. Panicking, he tried to open the yard gate. But to open that gate, he needed either my fingerprint or Mom's. He roared. He raged. His 2 children followed him, pounding on the gate too. Suddenly, I heard some kind of machinery turning inside the house. Countless thin bamboo stakes shot out across the yard. They did not do much damage, but they were terrifyingly effective as a warning. Mr. Mercer and his children could not dodge in time. Several stakes jabbed into them. They cried out in pain. The bamboo stakes stopped quickly, but then the lawn in the yard suddenly sank. Only a few narrow stepping posts remained exposed, leading toward the front door. And beneath those posts, sharp spikes filled the pit. Mr. Mercer was completely stunned. So was I. I truly never expected that when Mom built this villa, she had planned this thoroughly. This was not just built to stop zombies, it was even better at stopping people. Outside the yard, the zombies kept closing in. Mrs. Mercer sobbed and beat against the gate. She even tried to climb in over the side wall. The zombies came closer, step by step. Mr. Mercer could not see her, but hearing his wife cry, he was frantic with fear. Ignoring his own injuries, he desperately dropped down and begged me. All he wanted was for me to let his wife into shelter. This time, he sounded far more sincere than before. Too bad. The gate controls were not inside the villa. You had to go into the yard and enter a fingerprint manually to open it. No matter how much I pitied them, I could not go outside to save a stranger. Bang, bang, bang. Several gunshots suddenly rang out that only made Mrs. Mercer's sobbing draw the zombies in even more, which only lured the zombies closer. I looked toward the gunfire. Somehow, Mom had gotten her hands on a long combat sword. It looked like a straight-bladed sword. She stood in place, waiting for the zombies to charge her. Behind Mom stood a man in black. Polished-looking, with gold-rimmed glasses. He was dragging a suitcase in one hand. This bespectacled man had to be the lead researcher Mom had gone to find. Mom, all right. She swung that sword with the air cracking around it. I was still wondering why she did not just shoot the zombie in the head. When one zombie reached her first, Mom stepped forward to meet it head-on. The instant it lunged at her face, she raised the sword and chopped hard at the zombie's neck. The blade was so sharp, I almost thought Mom was slicing a watermelon. The zombie's head came clean off. It collapsed to the ground at once. By then, the other zombie had already lunged at Mom. She had no time to dodge, so she simply dropped into a crouch and slipped perfectly under its attack. The zombie missed her. It stopped, turned, and charged again with a roar. Mom did not hesitate. She shifted sideways. As she brushed past the zombie, she brought the sword down hard on both its hands. 2 hands, dripping black fluid, hit the ground. But the zombie still acted like it felt no pain. It lunged at Mom again, trying to bite her. Mom seemed to say something to the bespectacled He hurriedly dug through Mom's backpack and pulled out a hemp rope. Mom kept the zombie busy for a moment. At last, she took the rope from him. She circled the armless zombie a few times and successfully tied it up. It was the first time I had seen how Mom handled zombies. It was also the first time I truly understood just how skilled she was. Mom dragged the zombie that kept trying to lunge at her, then tied its legs up too. After that, she dragged it straight toward us. Mrs. Mercer had collapsed off to the side, completely drained. Her face was still full of terror and tears. Hey, dear Madeline, what are you doing at my front gate? Mrs. Mercer looked at Mom with tears streaming down her face. She seemed to want to grab Mom's clothes, but in the end, she was too frightened. Bye. The zombie Mom was dragging behind her. She only shook her head. Mom opened the gate with her fingerprint. When she saw Mr. Mercer covered in shallow wounds, she looked shocked. Oh, Mr. Mercer, what are you doing inside my home? Faced with Mom's question, he looked awkward. Still, he tried to change the subject. Ms. Leah, if you were not home. Oh, then who was inside your house? Has someone taken over your home? Mom shook her head. No, Mr. Mercer, the person inside my home is my son. While I was away, he stayed here alone. Mr. Mercer froze. Then he gave an embarrassed little smile. I see. Mr. Mercer, you still have not told me why you are inside my home. Mom asked the question very seriously. In Lyden, breaking into a private home is a very serious crime. An awkward, ingratiating look crossed Mr. Mercer's face. He had no choice but to explain that he wanted shelter, and then describe exactly how he had entered the yard. The more Mom listened, the deeper her frown became. Mr. Mercer, what you did must have frightened my son. Also, forgive my bluntness, but I cannot take you in. The supplies in my home are not enough. They only cover daily use for my son and me. Now there is one more mouth to feed. I am afraid I cannot help you. The bespectacled researcher clearly understood Mom's words. Behind her, he awkwardly pushed up his glasses. But Mr. Mercer would never give in that easily. He was a financier, hardened by countless battles. Bargaining was what he did best. His children were still wailing, loud enough to make my head ache. In the end, Mom chose to make one concession. She agreed to give him some food and basic supplies from the house. But sheltering them was absolutely out of the question. Mr. Mercer also knew Mom would not yield any further. Besides, he had noticed Mom's sword, so he could only nod and agree. Mom crossed the narrow stepping posts and led the bespectacled researcher inside. Mom? I took the backpack from her hands. Then I glanced at the zombie that could not get across, and at Mr. Mercer's family. What happened to you? Mom spotted the wound on my face at once. Woof, 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 woof. I still hadn't answered yet. The German Shepherd rushed out first and barked wildly at the zombie outside. Mimi, and the newly arrived bespectacled man too. Shut up. I snapped at the German Shepherd. He gave one wounded little bark, then whined and slunk into a corner. Only then did I look back at Mom. I am fine. When I was facing them down just now, one of the mercenaries fired at me. He missed. Mom touched the bloody mark on my face, her expression full of heartache. You shot both mercenaries outside? Yeah, I nodded. My aim is not great. Mom stroked my head. There was a faint shine of tears in her eyes, but she quickly held it back. This is Professor Avery. You can call him Uncle Julian. I turned to look at the bespectacled I gave a slight nod. Uncle Julian. Uncle Julian. The bespectacled man quickly murmured a reply. He seemed a little at a loss. Mom glanced at Mr. Mercer's family. With clear displeasure, she took a large bag of supplies from storage, then carried out another bag of flour for them. Those things were enough for their family to get through a long stretch safely. Mr. Mercer, I hope you will not disturb my son and me again. If there is a next time, I will not be as soft-hearted as my son. Mom's words were full of anger. Nothing like her attitude from before. Mr. Mercer took the supplies and nodded heavily. After his family had all left, Mom shut the gate again. She pressed some switch I could not see, and the lawn returned to normal. You had a rough time. Mom's eyes were full of heartache. It is all right now. Mom is back. You do not have to worry about any of this anymore. A sour rush of hurt suddenly rose in my chest. Tears welled at the corners of my eyes. Aye. So, where should I put my things? The bespectacled researcher awkwardly tugged his suitcase along, watching Mom with nervous unease. Mom shot him a glare. Then she casually pointed toward the lab. That is the laboratory. You can stay in the lab, or any room on the first floor. The second floor belongs to my son and me. The bespectacled researcher nodded. Then he turned to look for his room. In truth, the first floor only had one laboratory, and one room used for storage. Alright, let me treat your wound first. As Mom spoke, she went to get the first aid kit. She disinfected my wound with iodine antiseptic. Mom, can he really develop the vaccine? The bespectacled researcher looked too young. He looked barely 30. It made me question his expertise a little. Mom nodded. He is very reserved, but he knows exactly what he is doing. It took me quite some effort to find him this time. With him here, the vaccine will not take much longer. That is good. I let out a relieved breath. After Mom carefully finished treating my wound, she sent me upstairs to rest. She even had the nerve to say she would cook dinner. But with Mom's cooking skills, she might dare to make it, but I might not dare to eat it. Over the next few days, Mom and the bespectacled stayed in the lab, researching the zombie virus vaccine. Only when I cooked and called them to eat would I see them come out of the lab. Mom never told me the exact progress of the experiments, but from their expressions and their conversations, I could tell Mom was genuinely happy. The bespectacled researcher's arrival had indeed pushed the work forward by a lot. It made me feel success was finally within reach. Day after day passed. The outside world was still just as chaotic. Some countries even brought out their last resort weapons. But the zombie virus was not that easy to wipe out. Wherever there were people, there could be zombie virus infection. If even one person in 10,000 turned, all 10,000 could become zombies. Instead, the world was battered beyond recognition. Nothing but ruins and wreckage. While I was cooking, I heard the zombies struggling in the lab again. By then, I had already gotten used to it. To the sound of restraints hammering against the lab table, Mom and the bespectacled researcher had put those 3 unlucky zombies through countless experiments. I almost thought they'd experiment on them until they mutated again. But this time, the pounding still had not stopped by the time I finished cooking. After I carried the food to the table, I went to knock on the lab door as usual. Looking in through the glass on the door, I saw Mom and the standing in front of the zombie that kept thrashing. They seemed to be saying something, and that zombie was reacting differently than usual. It did not look like furious struggling. It looked more like pounding, driven by terrible pain. I knocked hard on the door, signaling Mom and the researcher that it was time to eat. I did not bother waiting for them. I poured the German Shepherd's food into his bowl, then sat at the table and started eating on my own. When I was almost full, Mom and the bespectacled researcher came out. Their faces looked happier and lighter than ever. Sweetheart, if nothing goes wrong, our vaccine is about to be finished. Mom happily grabbed the hand still holding my chopsticks. I froze. Then I looked at the bespectacled researcher. He pushed up his glasses. Now, it only needs a little adjustment, and it will be ready for use. That is pretty good. I nodded. Then I pointed at the dishes I had made. Hurry up and try them. I made sweet and sour ribs today, blanched greens, and seaweed egg drop soup. They taste pretty good. I did not understand their research. I only knew finishing the vaccine was a good thing, but eating mattered too. Mom and the researcher quickly sat down. Both of them shared their joy in their own way, and each ate 2 extra bowls of rice. They almost finished the white rice I had saved for the German Shepherd. The experiments progressed smoothly. Mom finally knocked on my bedroom door one morning. Sweetheart, I got in touch with the Commonwealth, because controls back home are so strict. Many people there have not been infected by the zombie virus. The vaccine can do the most good there. Professor Avery and I are going to send the vaccine there first. Do you want to come with us? Or stay here and leave once everything has fully settled down? I was still half asleep. I looked out at the clear sky beyond the window. Mom, I do not want to go. I do not know how to do anything useful. I would be no help there. So I will not go and become a burden to you. I will stay here and wait for you to come back. Mom stroked my messy hair. Sweetheart, you are not a burden. I am the one who has failed you. I have to break my promise again. I clearly promised I would stay with you and protect you. It is okay. I shook my head. I have realized the defenses here are seriously strong, as long as nothing unexpected happens. This island is still safe. All right. Mom nodded through her tears. If anything happens, contact me on the satellite phone. If it gets really bad, hide in the basement and wait for me. Got it. You, Waddy Wad. I teased Mom for getting emotional, even though my own eyes were shining with tears. After Mom left the room, sleep was gone. I sat on the bed, staring blankly out the window. Today was day 115 of the zombie outbreak. Without me realizing it, so much time had already passed. Mom and Professor Avery were the heroes who had developed the virus vaccine. An aircraft sent by the Commonwealth came to pick them up. The day before they left, Mom wrote a letter and had the German Shepherd carry it to Mr. Mercer's family. After Mr. Mercer's family failed to stay in my house, they moved into the Yorkish man's place. Aside from relying on Mom's aid, they also went to the shore to gather seafood. By sheer luck, they survived. With his sharp nose, the German Shepherd found Mr. Mercer's family that same day. Mr. Mercer's family followed the letter's instructions and appeared at the agreed place. By then, the clothes on their backs were already torn and ragged. They no longer looked anything like a powerful financier's family. I asked Mom why she was taking them with her. A sly, calculating smile curved at Mom's lips. Mr. Mercer spent his life as a capitalist, squeezing profit out of other people. Now he can spend the rest of his life getting squeezed for once. Mr. Mercer may not be a good man at heart, but his business talent is something few can match. Now that the zombie virus has ravaged the world, once the vaccine reaches people back home, everything will need rebuilding. Rebuilding the Commonwealth cannot wait. Taking Mr. Mercer back to the Commonwealth is obviously to squeeze his business skills for all they're worth. But that was only the official reason. I still felt Mom was getting revenge for how Mr. Mercer bullied me while she was gone. Still, for Mr. Mercer's family, it was not all bad. The safest country now was the Commonwealth. Instead of staying half-starved and ragged on the island, of course, it was better to have a safe place with food and shelter. Everyone is driven by profit. Mr. Mercer should be grateful he was still useful. Otherwise, knowing Mom, she would only kick him while he was down. Mr. Mercer's family was moved to tears with gratitude toward Mom. They looked ready to cling to her and call her their savior. I could not help laughing. In the end, they all left on the Commonwealth aircraft. On day 120 of the zombie outbreak, the Commonwealth announced to the world that it had developed a vaccine for the zombie virus and had begun rolling it out nationwide. On day 130 of the zombie outbreak, the vaccine rollout was showing clear results. Most people were no longer being attacked by zombies. The vaccine's effectiveness had reached 70%. Governments around the world began buying vaccines from the Commonwealth. But since the Commonwealth still lacked enough supply for its own people, it could not sell many doses abroad. In the end, in the spirit of humanitarian aid, it released the vaccine development method in patent form. The world was slowly beginning to stabilize. Lytton originally tried to shift the blame onto the Commonwealth, pushing some ridiculous Commonwealth threat narrative. It was laughable and absurd. Mom and Professor Avery simply showed their Lytton National Research Institute ID badges in public and shut them down hard. Lytton was the country hit hardest this time, without question. For now, it could only back down, stop stirring up trouble, and focus honestly on restoring daily life. The German Shepherd and I continued living quietly on Haven Island, safe, peaceful, and lonely. Mom often had people send supplies to me. After getting vaccinated, I could finally go outside. I once tried searching for Sophie's remains, and for any trace of a boyfriend. But I found neither. Only in the woods not far from my house did I find a decapitated zombie corpse. Judging by the clothes, it looked like Mrs. Lane. She may have been bitten while guarding zombified Mr. Lane, but I had no idea who had taken her head off. On day 342 of the zombie outbreak, the world had begun to stabilize. Almost every survivor had been vaccinated. Countries finally had the strength to mop up the remaining zombies. It was on a clear day that Mom came to take me and the German Shepherd off Haven Island. I returned to the Commonwealth after years away, seeing familiar faces from home. I felt as if my long loneliness had finally been soothed.